appreciate the coffee and tea or whatever. Oh, they went to school a long time. So it's all about school and Northbrook, how it was way back when. They call themselves Shermerville Kids. Do you remember why?
Oh, because it was before Shermerville.
Right, before it changed, right? Okay, so we can start. I think Mr. Hintz wanted to show you a show and tell stuff.
This is the first village hall of Shermerville. This is a model of it. It was built in 1901. It was built by the Lorenz family. You know the Lorenz garage right across the street here? You know, probably J. Lorenz's great-grandfather built this. And as you can see, it said wagon shop. This was before automobiles were popular. Everybody had a horse and wagon. And so they had the wagon shop downstairs. And they let the village use this shop. There was an outdoor stairway here. I didn't build the stairway because it would be rather fragile. But stairway up, and this was a meeting room where the village board would meet, or various organizations in town were free to use the meeting room upstairs. Over here on the side you see a couple of doors, and that's where the, can't call it a fire engine, it was a pumper. Maybe you've seen pictures with about 3 men on each side, and the men on this side pull down, and on the other side it goes up, it goes like that, and they pump water, and then some other ones have a hose and spray the water on whatever is burning. So they let the village store their pumper in there. Made this model for the centennial. They wanted a suggestion box for ideas for the centennial, and so we put a slot in the top to drop suggestions in, and you can take it out to get the suggestions out. Just one little aside, you know, you see this little button here. It's called a bullet catch. It's a spring-loaded little ball, and I got that from my grandfather, so that has to be at least 100 years old. When he died, I kind of inherited his tools and things that he had in cigar boxes and so on. So that's a sort of a keepsake as far as I'm concerned.
And his wife?
I just made a little bell. This is made from a picture that we have in the Historical Society.
You know, that was the bell that they rang when there was a fire.
Okay.
Tell us
Well,
about...
who would ring it? I mean,
Well, I suppose it would have been Mr. Lawrence that would, when he heard there was a fire, they'd ring the bell.
The firemen had come running to get the
Right.
pumper out.
And the time when we had the fire, the rope was broken. I mean, it was old, right.
and so they hook the pumper up to horses and bring it out, or?
Yes.
Okay.
How was school then, Miss Martin? How was school when you were their age?
Well, if this is what you brought, right? You've got some more?
They're asking you about school in your days.
Oh, about school in my days. I went to the school that is up, it's now, what we call it, the Crestwood Place. And I think I have, and I don't mind passing these around just so that I get this back. I brought a few pictures. I went through some things last night or sometime and picked out some things.
You can stay. Honey.
I thought I had picked up a picture of the Crestwood School. Yes. And this school, and we'll just let it, that school is still there. Now, prior to that, there was a school across Waukegan Road, and that was a gray building, painted gray, and it was wood. When I was about in 6th grade, they added 2 rooms to the east onto that school. And 2 rooms. It was then six rooms.
Okay.
They had 1st and 2nd grade in one room, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th, and 7th and 8th. And then as there were more children in the community, they built 2 rooms to the east And of course, that's changed now, since they made that into Crestwood Place. Now, we walked to school. We didn't have any buses. And even in the rain, it didn't matter. We went to school.
Now, did you have paved streets at that time, or
We had
sidewalks?
sidewalks.
Okay.
We did not have, the streets were not paved until sometime in the 20s. Because I can remember as a kid, when they had the, what would you call those, for the, they put the sewers, big water things in. Well, no, they were out, they sunk those, and that was to collect the water under the paved streets. And I can remember as a kid that Loretta Schill, that is Francie's grandmother, Grace Meyer, we used to run through those things before they were put in the underground.
Oh, so the big pipes that they
The
would carry
huge
underground.
pipes, right,
Okay.
right. And the streets were paved, I believe, it had to have been sometime in the 20s. I don't remember the exact year, but we had sidewalks from the time that I remember, that we walked to school. We ate lunch in the basement. We had no supervision, but we weren't,
Yeah.
we weren't kids that got into trouble down there.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to change classes now. So say thank you to our guests, and you need to what? Go up to science?
Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Well, I think Mrs. Rand would like to see you. Okay. And then we'll let the, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Let the administrators
You were a
out.
good audience.
You don't have one later. Excuse me, you're being videotaped there.
From the
When
exterior.
they built the original building here, of course, with my family history, you know, we were active. Every time the doors swung open at St. Norbert's up at Tempe, we were standing there, you know. So, when they first built this building, I think Father Hefner was the original pastor here. And we cleaned all these windows, but the church was in this, where I entered today.
Yes.
That's where the church was.
Yes.
That's where the church was, so.
Let me
Anyway.
introduce you to our 7th grade.
They all look really intelligent.
Right.
They are they are
Bright-eyed,
excited
bushy-tailed, but it's only 25 minutes to 10.
Right. Well, let me introduce you our Shermerville Kids. You remember why they call themselves Shermerville Kids? Who remembers? John? Right. So this is Mr. Les Happ. Remember Happ Road? Who knows where Happ Road is?
Okay, here we are.
Mrs. Billy Martin. Miss Billy Martin. And Mr. Don Hintz. Is there Hintz Road?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who knows where Hintz Road is? I have a map there. Do you know where Hintz Road is? Okay, you think so. Okay, say good morning.
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 Good morning to you.
So we're going to be ready. First, we're going to go with show and tell from this section from Mr. on some model he built for the centennial.
This is a model of the first village hall of Shermerville. It was built in 1901 by the Lorenz family. You know where the Lorenz garage is?
Yeah.
Right across the street. Same family.
It's still there.
It's probably, Jay Lorenz operates it now. This is probably built by his great-grandfather. And in those days, automobiles were just a new invention, so they had a wagon shop. They built wagons. And just one little aside, wagons had wooden spokes. Maybe you've seen pictures of a big wheel like this with a hub in the center and then wooden spokes going out and a wooden rim. Well, a wooden rim wouldn't last very long running through the mud and dirt and so on, so they always put a steel rim on the outside of the wooden rim. So I didn't build a model of that, but right next door was a blacksmith shop. And the reason you had a blacksmith shop next door to a wagon shop was to make the steel rims for the wooden wheels. Okay, I didn't make a model of it, but you see an upstairs doorway here. There was a stairway that came down here to get in. There wasn't an inside stairway. It was an outdoor stairway. And up here, upstairs was a large meeting room. And Lorenz family let the village use that for the village board meetings and various organizations in town met upstairs in that meeting room. Now, here on the side you see double doors, and they let the volunteer fire department keep what's called a hand pumper. I don't know if you've seen a picture of about 3 or 4 men on each side of a device, and these 4 pull it down, and the other 4 are going up. It goes like that. Well, that movement is pumping water from a cistern or a creek, and the other firemen have a hose to direct the water to put out the fire. So the first fire department had their pumper in here. So this is a little model. The bell on top was rung to let people know there's a fire, and the firemen are all volunteers. For example, the people that worked in the stores up and down Shermer Road would be a volunteer fireman, and when they hear the bell ring, they run over and get the pumper out and hook up.
Sorry, we had the 8th grade.
Our sisters.
Sit in the back. This is my 8th grade Spanish class.
Okay.
I teach Spanish and computers, and we have a little bit of a time. Eighth graders, this is the Shermerville Kids. Les Happ, Mr. Billy Martin, and Mr. Don Hintz. If you know why they call themselves Shermerville Kids, we discussed this some time ago. Why is it Shermerville? What? Why is it Shermerville? Nobody of the 8th grade know. No, 7th grade know.
Because we were kids when we were when the town was Shermerville.
Okay, thank you. So we started, Mr. Hintz is talking about the model of the old village that he made for the centennial. So you can just go pick up from there. Tyler, over here. Thank you.
Do you want me to repeat for you?
No.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
That-
We can say that by the
Just that you can see better from here, this side.
Billy can tell a little story about the bell.
Oh, did you show the inside?
Oh, I'm sorry. This was made for the Centennial Committee as a suggestion box, and I put a slot on the top for suggestion, so you had to get in to get the suggestions out. But one little detail, there's a little spring-loaded ball in here, and it's called a bullet catch. I got that in a cigar box that I inherited from my grandfather after he passed away. I'm kind of a woodworking nut, so I got his tools and bolts and nuts and screws, and there was half a dozen or more bullet catches. So that's over 100 years old, and I put it in there because of the centennial.
Thank you.
I made 2 of these. One was in the village hall, and this one's from the Historical Society. So anyone that had suggestions for the centennial could put them in there.
Well, I had just mentioned a few minutes ago that our store was struck by lightning. And when they went to ring this bell, the rope broke. And that was, I don't know how people knew that our store had been struck by lightning. But we had no fire engine in this town, and I believe this was in 1923. And it was in May, I remember that. Because I was the one that screamed in the house that we had a fire. I saw a reflection on a building that was next door to our store. And my dad went out into the garage. We called it a barn then, I think it was a barn. We have water out there, and he hooked up a garden hose to try to put out this fire. My 2 sisters and I ran down the street to Les Happ's father's store, and up above there was the telephone exchange. we had a terrible time waking Mr. Carstetter up, but when we did, we asked him to call Glenview and Deerfield fire departments. They came down here with their trucks and helped put out the fire. I remember my dad gave him a check, and it was because after that we had that fire that the village board decided they needed a fire truck. And that was when the first fire truck was purchased by the village.
What about your store before?
The store our store was across the track, in which is now the Success National Bank.
You know where that is.
But this is the way the store looked then. I brought these pictures. I found some of these things.
We have a question
And this
back
is what the store
here.
was like. And it was in the 1925 or 26 that my dad remodeled. We tore this part down. And some of you in here know Frances Albach. And you can just see right here that this was the bay window of her great-grandfather's house. He was a doctor, and he was so afraid that if this building burnt, that his house was going to be burnt. You have a question?
What kind of store was it?
What kind of store was it?
Oh, we had a grocery and market. And I think some of you kids would never realize when you think of a grocery store that you go into today, when people came into our store, when my father first started this, we waited on the customers. They would come in and stand in front of a counter, and whoever was in the store would get the merchandise. If they wanted a can of pears, you got the can of pears, and when they had everything that they wanted, it would all be added up, and they either charged it or paid for it.
There's no charge card, so what?
No,
charge?
no, that is.
Can I add just a little bit to that? You would ask the storekeeper, you wanted a box of cereal. You were standing on this side of the counter, he was on the other side. He would go to the others, to where the cereal was relatively lightweight package compared to canned goods. So the cereal was way up on the top shelf. He had a long stick with a gripper on here, and he could grip the cereal and bring it down. You bring it over to the counter, he had a brown paper bag to put it in, but he didn't open the bag was flat. And he'd write down 19 cents for a box of cereal. And then you wanted a can of peas, that was the lower shelf, and that was 8 cents. And then he'd write, when you got everything, he'd draw a line, and he'd add up in his head. There was no adding machine or computers or anything like that. Excuse me.
It's all right. Well, we had adding machines later, but I think it'd be interesting for you to know that Nessa's dad and my dad were in competition. They had the store, but it was friendly competition. If we ran out of something, we would go over there and get it, and if Mr. Happ ran out of something, he'd come over to our store and get it.
Why don't you two tell us?
Where is your store, Mr.
All right.
And what's the name of the store?
It was just W.P. Melzer, and on this side you see this store, and this was Mr. Landwehr's store, and I can tell a story about that. My dad and he were in business together, and one day my dad bought 2 cartons, how would you call it, of tuna fish. And of course, there would have been about 24 cans, a case, I want to say, a case. And Mr. Landwehr thought that was just terrible. We were going to have 48 cans of tuna. And they had a disagreement, and my dad said, well, why don't you take that side of the store, and I'll keep this side of the store. So then Mr. Landwehr built that building, which has now been empty for so long, where they think they're going to put in the Cypress Inn. I don't know, it's still standing there with the windows all boarded up and whatnot. But that was where Mr. Landwehr moved his store across the street. Then when my dad remodeled, he built that other store, and we had hardware in there. a hardware store.
You still have store?
Yes, so first of all, thanks for having us. It's a great privilege to come over here and speak with you. And everybody looks so bright and intelligent here this morning.
Oh, they
All right, we have one question. Who knows where the Baskin-Robbins store is? The ice cream store? Most of you should know where, oh, look at the hands go up. Okay, that's where my dad had his store. He had that building there. He bought that piece of property with an older building on it in around 1911. He bought it from a gentleman named Henry Daney, and the Daney family is still here. There's a Daney a business, the name is still there, but the family is no longer in that business, but the name is still there. On Techney Road, there's a Daney business. So he bought that business in around 1911 from Hank Daney, and then he tore that older building down in about 1928 or so, and he built that building that's presently there. And as Billy said, we had a similar type grocery store, and Don explained it beautifully. There we had a grabber, and we had charge accounts. We had a lot of people. Shopping was different then. There wasn't as many, I don't think there was any coupons that I can recall.
No.
There was no coupons or no books that you used for shopping. But usually the woman of the household would make up her menu. She would make it up for maybe a day or two, and she would phone her order in, and she would depend upon the clerk, whether it was Billy's sister, Helen, or
Excuse me, tell them your telephone number at this point.
it was Northbrook 1.
And ours was,
It was
and ours
one.
was 2.
Northbrook too.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, they would phone in their order, and most of them had either charge accounts or else they would pay when you delivered it. So the people didn't actually leave their home to go get their food supplies. They were phoned in, and sometimes they even mailed an order in if they didn't have a phone service. But anyway, shopping was different. We got a question here.
What kind of, maybe, how much would a penny be worth back then?
Well,
Chocolate thing.
probably about 3-4 cents, I'd say, maybe a nickel. You know, ice cream was usually a nickel a dip. You know, things were.
How much, maybe would $1 be worth then?
Well, it would probably be worth, I would say, maybe about $15 to $18 today, I would say. Would that be a rough
Was it
estimate?
good allowance? $1 was that plenty
That was
allowance?
right. In fact, the people that worked for my dad, now we're talking about 1930 during the Depression. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Depression period. People worked all week long. Now I'm talking about a 6-day week, not a 7-day week, but a 6-day week, not a 5-day week, but a 6-day week, for like $20 to $22 a week, and there was no benefits involved. You had to be responsible for your own health and for your own future retirement. But anyway, getting back to the grocery store a minute, a lot of things were more or less brought directly to the store from the farm. My dad and I used to ride with him. I was a young gentleman, or a young boy, I should say, at that time, and we'd go buy chickens, and these were live chickens. And what they do then, what they did at that particular time, it was called a New York dress, where you would butcher the chicken and then take the feathers off, but the feet and the intestines would still be on, and they were sold that way. They weren't like, as you go to the store today, they're all packaged nicely and very attractive. It wasn't that way at all. And we used to butcher our own veal and calves and things like that. And then during World War II, we had rationing. Yes, we have a question here.
Well, when I was at this one place, I forgot where I was, it was like a dead chicken. They killed it, and cutting off the head, and the pieces were going off the intestines and stuff.
Where was this at?
I don't remember.
Well, that was years ago on the farm. That's how they butchered chickens. They would have a big round block of wood with an axe, and they would chop the head off. You've heard that expression, like running around like a dead chicken with like a chicken with its head cut off. Everybody heard that? Anybody heard that expression? Yeah, that's where they get it, because there's a lot of nervous reaction, which is understandable. If all of you are taking a little science and a little biology or whatever, you understand the nervous conditions that happen and what occurs. But anyway, so much for the store. So now we know where the store was at.
How about school? Ask school questions.
School questions, okay. What might be of interest, go ahead, yes.
How many grades are there?
How many grades were in the school? Okay, you asked the right person, the right question. I graduated from grade school, from St. Norbert's grade school, but it wasn't here. It was at Techney. You know where Techney's at? Are you
Yes.
familiar where Techney's at? Where the Society of the Divine Word Monastery is?
Yes, we go there.
Okay, there's a building just to the north of it. It's a gift shop and a museum. Okay, that used to be St. Norbert School. There was 3 rooms, okay? There was 7 in my class. There was 3 rooms. The first room in the basement held the 1st and 2nd grade. The second room upstairs in the 2nd level held the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. We were all in the same room. And in the other room was the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And I think there was 7 or 8 in my class. I tried to remember the names last night. I've been so busy I haven't had time to really prepare too well. But some of the members of my grade school class are still around Northbrook. But anyway, and all of our teachers were nuns. They were Sisters of the Holy Spirit, which, are you familiar with the Sisters of the Holy Spirit?
Yes, we have the book on that.
Right. I brought 2 books along today. I would encourage you, if you have an opportunity, to take a look at the fabric of our history book, which was written. Did you have it
We
here?
have it, we bought it.
Don was very instrumental, Mr. Hintz was very instrumental in getting this book together. And there's a lot of very good information. Even my own children enjoy reading it, and everybody that I've spoken to have enjoyed it. They found it very informative, and it's a nice link to history. The other book that I would strongly suggest reading is the biography of Sister Leonarda Lentrup. She was the sister superior that came from Europe that was instrumental in starting the Sisters of the Holy Spirit up in Techney. And all the nuns we had for teachers were from that order. And it was really classified as a missionary church at that, a mission church, the one in Techney. And then when they moved to Northbrook, I don't know what year it was exactly, but I think it was around 50, 51, sometime in that period, that they moved from Techney to Northbrook. The congregation split up at Techney, and they developed a Catholic church in Northfield, and then they founded St. Norbert's here. This piece of property here was a small farm which sat right, there was a building, I think, right about where we're sitting here, I think. But the rest of this was all open territory here. There was no houses behind us or around us at all. The park was here, but there was no homes at that particular point in time.
How about the train station?
The train station was here, right. And one of the peculiar things about this particular area, the streets were put in by a developer sometime during the 20s to develop this property, and then the Depression came along, and the streets laid idle for several years. Then there was a man came along named Mr. Culligan, who had an idea with Culligan zeolite to produce a water softener, water treatment plant, and this was a desirable spot because they had to dry the zeolite out on these pavement areas, and it was ideal because the streets were vacant and they weren't used. So that was instrumental in the Culligan Company founding in Northbrook. In fact, Don knows about Culligan. He's a former employee of Culligan and has a lot of
Is that the same
information.
Culligan water?
Yeah, right. It's the same Culligan water, right. So, and it was very instrumental. So the Catholic school up at St. Norbert's, like I said, classes were small. I don't think we had to wear uniforms. I tried to remember that. I don't think we had to, but discipline was very much occurred. It was there, and we had, when I was in grade school, I got out of St. Norbert's, I think in 1943. I think Father Stoll was the pastor for a while, and Father Benz was. They were both members of the Society of Divine Word, SVD priests. So anyway, the curriculum was, probably different as well, but we had to line up outside, I can remember, to go in. You just couldn't run in from the playground. We had a ball field that was where we played baseball in the back. There was a cemetery behind there, and there was a ball field where we played baseball. And we played baseball against Grove School once in a while, or other schools in town if we had the possibility to do so. So let's see, what else can I tell you now about the businesses in Northbrook?
Let's see if some people up front have questions about
Sure.
schools.
Okay, any other school
Sure.
questions? Yes.
How did you get to school?
Okay, most of the time I rode a bike. However, towards, maybe in 6th grade or 7th grade, we did have bus service. And one of the fellows that drove the bus was Mr. Lorenz, one of the Lorenz family. Herman Lorenz drove the bus, and it was a smaller bus. But we did have bus services, or else our parents drove us in their automobiles. Sometimes the neighbors, if we had neighbors that went to school there, they would. I lived on Angle Avenue in Northbrook. I was born and raised on Angle Avenue, which is right up near where the old Crestwood School used to be. Are you familiar with that?
Where the old Jewel used to be.
Where
but they just-
yeah, right, just behind where the old Jewel used to be. Okay.
Any questions? Yes. Yes, now.
What kind of punishment?
Well, they had rulers in those days, wooden rulers with a little metal strip on them, you know. And those sisters got very handy. If you disobeyed, you'd have to hold out your hands and find you. Or they had a cloakroom, and you had to go stand in the cloakroom. If you talked too much or you interrupted a lot, you had to go. And I can still remember the odor in the cloakroom, because most of our clothing was wool, and we'd play out in the playground. We'd get all full of snow and stuff, and you had those big heavy galoshes, and you had to go in that little cloakroom, which was sort of narrow and long with all these hooks along the wall, and it was warm in there, and all of those snow-packed clothing would start to thaw, and it has sort of an unusual odor to it, you know? I don't mean, but we're trying to make this as realistic as possible. We got a question in the back, yes?
How long have you lived here?
I've lived here all my life, which is since I was born in 1929, and other than the 4 years I spent in the Navy, and the years that I spent away from when I was at college, and then I worked 2 years in Effingham, Illinois for DeKalb Seed Corn Company when I first got out of the Navy. Other than that period, I've been in Northbrook all my life.
How about Miss Martin? How long? How long have you lived here?
Yes, Jolie's been here.
I remember when Lester was born.
How are you older?
I am.
We all look like we're 39, but...
Well, I'll be very honest and tell you how old I am. I am 86.
Wow, you're great.
And when Lester talked about those chickens, I can remember Mrs. Sinsel killing a chicken for Sunday, and I could hardly stand. I would watch her and go out there, she'd chop the head off, and I would have to leave. I couldn't stand that, to see the chicken without its head.
One other...
But Mr. Hintz had a chicken, his father had a chicken farm, right?
That's right, on Deputy Road. Yeah,
You had
chicken
a
farm on
chicken-
Deputy Road.
Tell us
yeah.
about your chicken farm.
Can I tell you about killing chickens? You asked about the railroad station. The railroad station was on this side of the tracks.
On the east
And
side.
Mr. Hipsley was a station agent. When I was in, started about when I was in the 7th grade, my dad started a chicken farm. And I helped him build a 2-story chicken house for 1,200 laying hens. When the season was good, we'd get 600 eggs a day from 1,200 hens. But we also built what we call a broiler house for 3,000 broilers. Now, the way that worked, every Tuesday morning, I'd come here. We had a 1930 Nash automobile and take the back seat out. Come here, and Hipsley would have 3 cardboard cartons, square, about this high. They were divided in 4. There was 25 day-old baby chicks in each corner, so there was 100 chicks in a carton, 300 chicks. On Monday, I was cleaning out the cages because Tuesday morning I'm bringing these new chicks and put them in. The new chicks got the upper layers of the cages because it was warmer there. The room was heated, and no heat goes up, and the older ones got moved down. So we had 300 day-old, then we had 300 that were a week old, 300 2 weeks, on up to 10 weeks. Okay, when they're 10 weeks old, this was after I got out of high school. I was running the farm myself. My dad went, when I say, my mother said we never had any money, but we had all the chicken and eggs we could eat. So Dad went out and got a job to get some money, and I ran the chicken farm. So on Thursday morning, Thursday was a killer, more ways than one. I'd get up early, I'd have to go gather the eggs first thing, bring them in, have breakfast, before I went to breakfast, I lit a fire in a little hot water heater, burning corn cobs. And there was a tank next to it, and the water was getting hot while I'm eating breakfast. I came out, I had a transfer crate that would hold about 25 10-week-old chickens. These are the oldsters of the group. Bring them into the killing house. Now, Les and Wilma talked about chopping off the heads and the chickens flopping all over. Well, we had 300 chickens to sell, and so we had to sell them to butcher shops and restaurants, and they didn't want them all bruised and black and blue. So we had 4 funnels, about this big at the top and about this big at the bottom. And I would catch 4 chickens out of this transfer crate, hold them, put them head first into the funnel. Now their head is hanging out, and their wings are in the funnel, and their legs are sticking up. Then, instead of the axe that these people used, we had a very sophisticated method. It was like a pair of pliers, and the top jaw of the pliers was like a cup, and the bottom jaw of the pliers was like a razor blade. Now, you grab the head, you open the mouth, you put the razor blade in the cup on top, you squeeze the pliers, and that cut the jugular vein to the brain. They would try to flop around like their chickens did, but they couldn't because they were in the funnel, so they weren't getting bruised. They would hang there and they would bleed out. By the time I got the 4th one bled out, while the first one was through flopping around, we had what was my mother's pressure cooker container. It was about this big around, about so high, and we let this hot water from the hot water heater run in there. And I would take this first chicken by the legs and dunk him into the water 4 or 5 times. And then we had a table. It wasn't a flat table. It pitched toward the center and had a slot in the center. Put the chicken on there. About 6 swipes like that, and you got the feathers off. Then we fed them buttermilk mixed with grain, and buttermilk came in 300-pound barrels, this big, this high, and we had well water running into the barrel to cool the chicken. So after we got them dressed, plop them in the barrel, get the next one. And I'd go from about 7:30 in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon, dressing 400 or 300 chickens.
By yourself?
By myself. Then Friday morning, I'd take the back seats out of the mash. I'd erect a bunch of cartons about this long, this wide, this deep, and I'd put 24 chickens in there. Still had the heads. What you did, you took the head and you tucked it under a wing, and you turned the wing. You can see the wing like that probably on a chicken, and the head goes under there. Put 24 in a carton, seal the carton, put it in the back of the mash. When I got that loaded up, put a couple of crates of eggs in, and I'd drive to Chicago to deliver the chickens. We had a chain of restaurants, I can't think of the name of it now, but there was about 4 restaurants in the loop of Chicago. The challenge there was to find, you had to go in the alley behind the restaurant, find a parking place reasonably close, take the carton out, carry it in, and then find somebody to sign the ticket for them. Do they want another carton or 2 more or whatever? So that was...
How old were you, Mr. Hill? High school?
When I was doing that full-time, after I graduated from high school, what was I, 17, 18?
And did you have chores before school when you were in grade school like this kid?
Oh yeah, we had the chicken farm, and my main chore was cleaning the roosts in the morning. The chickens all set up on a roost. They had there were 2x2 pieces of wood just in rows. And then when it got dark, they'd all get up there and sit on the roost and go to sleep. Well, they did their business on the droppings board behind the roost, and I would have to clean that in the morning before I went to school, because if they would during the day step in that and then step on an egg, that meant that we were using steel wool to clean the eggs all evening. So if you kept the roost clean, the eggs were clean, and you didn't have to work so much in the evening. But after school, I gathered eggs again, and when I got
Any
in...
more questions?
Getting back to this young lady's question about how did I get to school, we had to, I don't know if boys still have to be altar boys, but when I was your age,
They are.
when I was your age, we had, or even younger, I think I was only 8 or 9 maybe at that time, and you had to learn to be an altar boy. And at that time, all the masses were in Latin. So you had to learn Deum quile tificat, Juven tutem meum. If you know what that means, if you have any Latin.
Yes,
It's Latin. That was supposed to be Latin. I don't know, I may have
Yeah.
murdered it because I wasn't too good with it. But it was a real chore. So if you, I think we had to go to Mass every morning, and you were always selected to be an altar boy. You would serve a week maybe as the altar boy, and then maybe you'd get a week off. Or if there was a funeral or a wedding, you were drawn out of your classroom to go participate in the burial ceremonies out in the cemetery or whatever. So, and that was the age I was at when these gentlemen are in the back here when I was an altar boy. So if the Mass was early and the bus times didn't coordinate, you had to ride your bike to school.
Now, where did you go to high school?
I went to Northbrook High School right up here. I didn't go, when I was growing up in Northbrook, if you wanted to go to a Catholic high school, you had to go to St. George's High School, which is no longer available. They closed, I think, in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. And they were on the north side of Chicago. So some of the people that went to, some of the boys, it was just strictly a boys' school. If they had wanted to go to a Catholic boys' school or high school, they had to catch the North Shore train, which is, the crossing is still there. It's on Dundee Road, if you're familiar with that area, east of Northbrook. They would catch the North Shore train, and there was a stop. I don't remember exactly what stop it was that they got off at, but they attended school there. Some of the graduates from St. Norbert's School of Technique lived in Northfield, and they went to New Trier High School, and the rest of us went to Northbrook High School. And Northbrook High School is located where I mentioned before, off of Angle and Keast Avenue, where the
Used to be the grade school.
used to be the grade school and the high school. I went to the first grade at Northbrook, and then my parents thought I needed a little bit more discipline, so they sent me to St. Norbert's. So I went from second grade to 8th grade at St. Norbert's.
Tyler has a question.
Sure.
What you doing in your spare time?
Where'd you hang
Spare
out?
time.
Where'd you hang out?
Where did I hang out? Well, we had, in high school, we hung out in the youth center, which is right over here next to the Historical Society. Do all of you know where the Historical Society is?
Across the street.
Yeah, it's right across the street. I encourage you to attend it if you have an opportunity, because
We'll be making a field trip there next
Yeah, great.
month.
Okay. That little building to the next, which is now part of the district, the park district, that was the youth center, and we used to have activities in there. As far as some of the other off-duty things, we used to have a lot of baseball. We played baseball in this park that's across from St. Norbert's here. The Diamond was over there, and I can remember when they put the first lights up there in that park, which is across from here. We did a lot of ice skating. We ice skated. Are any of you familiar where Milton Avenue is? It's on the, Milton Avenue. It's just on the other side of the old Jewel over here. There's a tennis court up there. They used to flood that, and that's where we had a lot of ice skating. We had a man in this town by the name of Ed Rudolph, who was instrumental in ice skating and cycling as far as the community goes, and baseball as well. And as you know, at one time we had World Championship speed skaters from Northbrook. Are you familiar with that? They won skating, and Henning, I can't remember, and that's right. So there was a lot of, we had a lot of, on a little, not world level, but a lot of minor professional level and college level. We had a lot of athletes who came from Northbrook that were good tennis players and football players and what have you. Okay? So we did play a lot of baseball, did a lot of ice skating, and sometimes we even ice skated on the rivers. I can remember playing hockey. if you're familiar with, when you go to Wheeling, you cross the Des Plaines River, there's a bridge, and on the south side of that bridge, they used to have, that would freeze over, and they would scrape the snow off, and we'd play hockey there, and the Equipment Boys was really something fundamental. We took bigger magazines like Life magazines or whatever magazines you could find. Nobody had money to buy equipment, or if you had the money, they thought it was a waste of time to buy fancy equipment. So you had to improvise your own equipment. So you'd wrap magazines and put tape around them for shin guards, and you'd wrap black tape around your hockey stick so it wouldn't crack. All those little things were. So boys were pretty much the same then as they are
How
now.
about girls, Miss Martin? What did the girls do? What fun?
Billy, Christmas, or the girls do.
What did the girls do? Well, I remember trying to ski at Bramer's Hill. Of course, that's all houses now. And I used to skate back where the library is. I skate. We roller skated to school a lot because there wasn't any such thing as a bus service. We kids walked to school. And I went to high school in Highland Park with Deerfield Shields High School because that was the closest school here. And we took a bus in the morning over here at where that building is that's supposed to be the Cypress Inn. We would leave at 7:30 in the morning and get back home here like sometime between 3:30 and 4 o'clock. And there was a lot of disadvantage to that because you didn't have the opportunity to participate in any of the after-school activities, like being on a team, either playing baseball, basketball, or even hockey or something like that, because we had to make that bus. There was only the one bus. I remember once I walked home from Highland Park because I missed the bus, and I walked home from there at 6 miles.
You say thank you. There's a test for 7th grade. They want you for your test, so you can
Thank you.
You're a good audience.
Leave your papers. 3 Shermerville Kids. They are our seniors who have volunteered to come and talk to us about oral history as part of our Centennial Project. So we have Mr. Les Hintz, John Hap, Ms. Billy Martin, and Don Hintz. I keep getting mixed with the name. Mr. Hintz, Mr. Hap, and Ms. Martin. Now, who knows Hap Road? Where Hap Road?
What?
Oh.
Hap Road.
Miss Vitale lives in Hap Road.
Yeah.
Does she?
Yeah. And then there's a Hintz Road. You know where's Hintz Road? No. Where's Mr.
It's west of the Des Plaines River. If you went Techney Road, there was a bridge across the river. On the other side is Hintz Road.
Okay.
And they're named after your family?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yes,
cool.
yes. And they originally came from, my ancestors originally came from Trier, Germany, which is sort of between France and Germany, a little south of Luxembourg. And they came over and they first settled in Winnetka, and then they were the second family in Winnetka, and then they decided to move west, so they moved. Are you familiar where Winnetka is?
Yeah.
Okay, they moved west to Northfield. You know where Northfield is?
My grandma lives there.
Okay, so that wasn't a very big move. It doesn't look like a big move this day and age, but that's where they moved, and that's where my parents came from. Are we ready to start?
Sure.
Are we
So, and then, Mrs. Billy Martin in the center, her maiden name is Melzer, and there's a Melzer Road, where they talked about a Melzer Road.
I don't know her, but yeah, I didn't know.
A Melzer building, though.
A Melzer Building,
Right,
okay.
Melzer building.
And we'll
Okay.
start with a show and tell of the little
The little box.
village
right?
box.
The little village box. Everybody looks bright-eyed and bushy-tailed today, so just relax and enjoy.
This is a model of the first village hall of Shermerville, built in 1901. It was built by the Lorenz family. You know where the Lorenz garage is? That's where it stood, and it was built by, I think, the great-grandfather of Jay Lorenz, who operates the garage now. That garage, by the way, is the oldest same family-owned business in the state of Illinois. Continuously since 1847, I believe it was. Same family has owned that garage. Now, in those days, it was a wagon shop. You know, before automobiles, horse and wagon was how you got around. So their wagon shop was downstairs in the front of this building. I didn't put it on here because it'd be too fragile, but there was a stairway from the street up to this door, and up on the second floor was a meeting room. And the Lorenz family let the village use that as the village hall, the meeting place for the village board. Here on the side, you see two doors that swing open. They established a volunteer fire department. Now, by volunteer fire department, the proprietors of the store along Shermer Avenue would volunteer to help put out a fire if it occurred. Well, they had they didn't have a fire engine because we didn't have cars and trucks in those days. A pumper was a device with a long rail on each side, and put about 4 men on each side, and you pull down on this side, the other side would go up, and do that, and you could pump water out of the creek or from a cistern or some source of water, and a hose, the other firemen would try to put out the fire. So they stored their pumper in there. Now, up on the top is a bell, and when they knew there was a fire, they'd pull the rope down inside to ring the bell, so the volunteer firemen know and they come running over, get the pumper out. If it's a distance away, they'd bring a team of horses and hook it onto the pumper, and they'd go to the fire. I made this as a
and he had water. Why he had water connected there? He was afraid to go into the store because he thought that the draft of opening the door would just make the fire worse than what it was. So he broke a small window and he was trying to put the fire out with just a garden hose. But in the meantime, my two older sisters and I went down to Lester's father's building, and we woke up Mr. Carstetter, who had the telephone exchange up there. And we finally got him awake, and we asked him to call the fire department from Glenview and from Deerfield. And both of those departments responded to our request, and they were the ones that actually put the fire out. Now, I know some of you in here maybe know Frances Albach. Her grandfather lived next door. Her grandfather, her great-grandfather, lived next door. He was a doctor. And he was so concerned because when they did, finally, the men had brought this pumper over there. They pulled it over there. The hoses didn't fit. One was like this and one was like that. And Dr. Sinsel was very concerned because he said, if that building goes, so goes my house. But we did get the fire out. Now, as a result of that, the village board decided to buy a fire truck. And that was the first.
The truck was built by a firm called Ryland and Bree, and it was right at the corner of Walters Avenue and Waukegan Road, in the southeast corner. And they built special trucks, and they built this chassis, and then they bought what they call a Pierce pumper, which they mounted on the chassis, so the motor of the truck operated the pumper, and the fellows didn't have to do this.
But you have to collect water in a tank?
They would take water from the creek or a cistern.
You know, as I remember, Dr. Sinsel was trying to put a hose together. I don't know. We must have had village water then.
Did you have water?
We had village water then. And he was trying to, and the thing didn't fit. I meant the, whatever, what do you call those?
Fire plug,
Whatever, I mean, the hose and that didn't fit together.
Didn't fit
And
the
I
fire
can
plug.
remember, he used some very explicit language when they were trying to put this together. And we had, they had a place to, they had a fire plug out there then.
Any questions? Guys,
Yeah.
what's your question? Mike?
Yes?
How'd you keep warm at night?
Hmm?
How'd you keep warm at night?
How did you keep warm at night?
How did we keep warm at night?
Yeah.
Well, I can remember as a kid, we only had stoves. We didn't have heat. When we think about heat today, you have you either have a boiler or a furnace or something in your house. What do you call it? But we didn't have heat. I can remember that. Well, I think it was in 1926 that my dad remodeled the whole store, and then we had central heat. Couldn't think of the word central heat. But prior to that time, we didn't have central heat.
I can talk to that a little bit. We lived on a farm on Techney Road, and our heat was, they called it a potbelly stove in the living room.
That's what we had.
And the main thing we burned was corn cobs, because we were on the farm, and after we shelled the corn off the cobs burn pretty good and make a lot of heat. They don't last very long, so you keep shoveling them in. Then in the kitchen, Mother had a cook stove, which she also burned corn cobs, or she could burn wood or coal in it. The cook stove had like burners on top, where she had a frying pan, or it had an oven where she could bake a cake. And on the side, it had called a water reservoir, and I think it hold about 5 gallons of water. And I could carry water from the well pump, pour it in the reservoir, and when the stove was going, it was warming the water. So then if she wanted to make tea or coffee or something, she would take that warm water, put it in a tea kettle, and put it on top of the stove to heat it up to boiling to make whatever she wanted to make with boiling water. So that was the only, our bedrooms were upstairs, no heat, just a lot of blankets. It's get cold in the wintertime.
You know, I'd like to ask you a question too. If you're ill, do you ever have a doctor come to your house?
No.
Well, now, this is something that's very, very different, because when I was growing up, and I don't know, maybe Lester or Don, if someone were ill, the doctor came to your house. You did not go to his office. The only time you would go to a doctor's office would be if you had an accident where you maybe had cut yourself or something like that. But if you were ill, the doctor came to your house. There were no drugstores, nothing here in town. And the doctor would bring a case in which he would have medicines. And he would prescribe something before he would leave the house. And that's something I think that kids today don't understand. I can remember that I developed scarlet fever when I was in 4th grade. And I was taken over to Evanston Hospital, and I know a lot of you have heard of Evanston Hospital. And at that time, they had a building over there that was specifically for children, or for anybody who had a contagious disease. I was taken over there at the very end of January, and I did not come back home until the 14th of March. And I was there for six weeks. And you know that Dr. Sinslow traced that case of scarlet fever back to a student who was in the same grade that I was. I was in 4th grade at that time. And when I came home from the hospital, he had asked my dad if I could come over to his office. I went over to his office one evening, and he said to me, now that you have had scarlet fever, He said, is there anything that you remember about anybody in school? And I looked at him and I said, yes. And I named a person who had been taking the skin off of her hands, and I had changed desks with her. At that time, you didn't move desks around. They were screwed to the floor. And it was just a misfortune that I had changed desks with this girl. I developed scarlet fever, and I was very, very ill with it. I mean, they
A lot of
really
people
didn't
died.
expect me to recover. And I can say one more thing. I taught school, and it was the very first year that I was teaching school that they began to immunize or give children what they called the Dick test. And this was supposed to prevent children from ever getting scarlet fever. And when I was at the Evanston Hospital, my dad had gotten a telephone call that they did not expect me to live. I had an older sister who was a nurse at Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital. My dad went down there to the hospital and asked my sister if she knew of anyone who might be able to help me. She mentioned one doctor, but he did not happen to be in. But she described him to my dad. My dad was leaving the hospital, and he met this man who fit the description that my sister had given. And my dad addressed him, explained the situation to him. And this doctor, whose name, it's a funny name for a doctor, was Dr. Crooks. And he said to my dad, this has not been, well, I guess that they would say that it was something that would help, but my dad said, let's go. He came out and gave me a shot of whatever, and it was from the Dick test. I don't know, this may be so far back from when you maybe never even heard it, but you've heard of the Dick test, and the Shit test was for diphtheria. And it was after I had gotten that shot that I did begin to recover. But this doctor said he would never take credit for it. He said he felt that maybe I was just strong enough to fight the disease. I don't know if you kids don't hear anything about this stuff anymore. I mean, like chicken pox, measles.
I got chicken pox.
Scarlet fever.
We've got
I've gotten chicken pox.
Chicken pox, maybe.
And if you,
Measles.
add to that, if you had chicken pox, mumps, or measles, sometimes the doctor would put your house in quarantine.
Oh, that's right, the
And you'd have-
signs.
yeah,
There's
you-
no on the doors.
They put a sign on the door, and so if you had any deliveries coming, nobody could go into the house,
Just-
or your brothers or sisters or parents were limited to their activities as well. So you just stayed at home and recovered.
We recovered measles, keep out.
So there's a
chicken
big
pox.
sign outside your door?
Well,
Yes.
maybe, 6 by 8, something like
They were
that.
like this.
Usually they were red in color, black printing.
Right, and the doctor always had them, and I often think that sometimes that there might be some over there in Mary Albach's grandmother's basement. But that's what they did, and you could go to school and walk to school, and you'd say, oh, so-and-so has chicken pox, or oh, that they have something else. I mean, right, that's,
Any questions? More questions?
So were you and your family all born at home?
beg your pardon?
Were you and your family all born at home, your siblings?
Yes, we were,
No
yes,
husband.
I was born here, right here in Northbrook.
But I mean, at home,
Yes,
not at the hospital.
definitely, at home.
All my sisters were, but I was born
You were
in
born
St. Francis Hospital in Evanston.
I remember
Yeah.
that, I do
I was
remember
there.
that.
go.
And your dad was so proud of
Tell us
you.
about your days at St. Norwood School. St.
Yes,
Shine your
my name's
beautiful
Les
face.
Tappan. Thanks for having us here today. It's great to enjoy your company and to exchange thoughts and ideas. Anyway, I went to St. Norbert School as well, and I graduated from St. Norbert School just like you people are going to do, but it was a couple of years ago, more than a couple. And St. Norbert's was at a different location. It was up in Techney,
which is located on Waukegan Road. Are you familiar with that
Yeah.
area?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a gift shop now, a gift shop and an art museum. I think they have art displays there. And we had 3 rooms up there and 8 grades. The one room at the lower level was the 1st and 2nd grade, and down there was a little gymnasium with a sort of a low ceiling. It was hard to play any basketball or anything in there. We did other activities. They had school plays. They had a little stage with school plays, and we ate our lunch down there, which incidentally we brought. I think there was maybe a hot meal one day a week. I'm not too sure. Okay, so the first room on the lower level was the 1st and 2nd grade. The next room upstairs, there was 2 rooms upstairs, and also the church was up there. There was the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and the other room was the 6th, 7th, and 8th. And I think I had 7 or 8 people in my graduating class, and from 1943, I believe it was there. So anyway, the building is still standing there. We heated with the coal. They used to deliver huge amounts of coal. Everybody knows what coal is. At one time, people used to use coal and wood for heating. And some of the functions, we had baseball diamond outside there for athletics. Most of our recess periods were pretty well organized. Usually we had all sisters teaching. We didn't have any lay people teaching. And they were all Sisters of the Holy Spirit, which are from the corner of Willow Road, Waukegan Road, which was the old
by Target.
convent.
Yeah.
Pardon?
By Target.
Yeah, by Target. You got it, right. In fact, they used to own that property.
Yeah.
I think the sisters owned that property where Target's at. Very good. Now I think they live across the way there. Anyway, and then when I was the age of these boys here, I was an altar boy. You had to serve that function, and you do it maybe for a week at a time. Or if there was somebody if there was a marriage in the congregation or a death, you usually had to serve as an altar boy for the funeral proceedings, what have you. But at that time, everything was in Latin, so Ade Quilietificat, you have a question?
Yeah, you were talking earlier about how you would play baseball, but what other sports did you have?
Oh, okay, well that's good. We played baseball, mainly softball, and we had some pretty good softball players at that time. And anyway, other sports were ice hockey. We did skating in Northbrook here, and we also played baseball in this park across the street from you here. And we ice skated not only on the rivers. This little creek that runs by here often would flood in the wintertime. It would freeze, and some of us would scrape the snow off of it and play hockey there. Or else we would play hockey at another skating rink, which is now a tennis court. It's on Milton Avenue. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's behind the old Jewel. Remember the old Jewel used to be over there? A couple of blocks over is Milton Avenue.
Oh, yeah.
There's a tennis court back there in a park. And we used to skate there. So anyway, yes.
In the creek, did anyone ever fall into break the
There
ice?
were, on occasions, especially when the weather became a little marginal, the ice would break up. But most of the time, it was cold enough that we'd scrape off. I can remember playing in Deerfield, at a pond up there, hockey. We played Deerfield. We also played wheeling, but when we played wheeling, if you're familiar, you take Dundee Road to Wheeling, you go over the Des Plaines River. On the south side of that bridge, that's where the hockey rink was, and we used to scrape away the snow. And then one of the incidents, if there's any hockey players in here, now you have these fancy shin guards, We used to use magazines, and we'd tape the magazines there for protection, And you just use different things for playing sports. You tape the hockey stick, to make it look more authentic and everything. So, but at school, we played another game at school called Pom Pom Pull Away. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Where one person would be in the middle, and then you try to run. The other people try to run past them or around them without getting tagged.
I played that.
If you were tagged, you might call it a different game now, but anyway. So that was another activity that they did. But as I spoke before, one of the things I remember is a lot of our activities in the outside, we all wore winter clothing, which was made of wool. And in our classroom, behind the classroom, there was a door, and beyond that door was a cloakroom. And the cloakroom was where you hung your wraps after recess. And a lot of times they were packed with snow, and then the snow would melt, and it had a peculiar odor when the when the clothing got wet, from the snow melting. You're familiar with all of that, I'm
damn,
sure.
yeah.
And if you were naughty, you were sent in that cloakroom, and you had to stand in the corner of the lawn, if you interrupted or spoke out of turn or were disturbing another fellow student, And sometimes the sisters would come back with those rulers. There was a wooden ruler that had a little metal edge in it. You hold your hand out, and wham, she'd whack you one, So anyway, they don't do those things now. I don't think we have to wear uniforms though. So anyway. So any other questions? Any other questions about school? Yeah, there's one back there.
What types of clothes did everyone wear?
What types of clothes?
Yes.
We primarily wore jeans or dungarees at that time. Dungarees were sort of popular, then jeans became popular, the regular Levi jeans, Dungarees are sort of similar to jeans, and there was a khaki pants too. The boys wear khaki pants. The girls, I think, were sort of at lib as to what they could wear. Everything was very modest, you know what I mean? The clothing was a little bit different at that time. Yeah, we got a question here.
What kind of subjects did you learn?
Well, we had geography and English and math and of course religion and history. So we didn't have so much language science. I didn't have Spanish or French. We didn't have Spanish.
Did you have science?
This was primarily science. We had a little basic biology and a lot of geography and no, we didn't have any art. No.
Music?
And if you wanted to do music, they had a fellow that came in to offer special music classes with the guitar if you wanted to, but most people didn't bother with that. But this was now in St. Norbert's grade school now. We're only 3 rooms, we're only, 7 or 8 students per class. Yes?
Back about clothes, did you have lots of clothes or just a few pieces?
We had very few pieces. You didn't have a big variety of clothes at home at that time. Your clothes were sort of more basic, it's hard to explain, but you didn't have a variety of clothes to pick from. I don't think the clothing issue was so much of a personality impact as it is today, you know what I mean? That's a good question. Yeah, who's next? Keep your hands up, we'll get to all of you.
Jen, go Jen.
Do you have wooden desks?
Pardon?
Did you have wooden desks?
What kind of desk?
Yes, we had wooden desks, and the wooden desk had a little circle where you put the ink well up there, that we had ink, and fountain pens. We didn't have ballpoint pens at that time, and most of the desks, you either had to lift them up and your books were in there, or you had to bend over and the books were underneath.
That's what we did.
That's what you do now, yeah.
But as Mrs. Martin was saying, they were bolted to the floor.
That's
Right,
right.
and the seats on a lot of them would fold up, you could fold the seats up, and we had to go to, and of course, the boys had to serve as altar boys, like I said, and we had to go to mass every morning, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I think we had to go to mass every morning. Any other questions?
Did you make your own clothes?
My mother did some sewing and mending. I don't think we made any of our own clothes. Most of our clothes shopping, we did, I think, in Evanston or Chicago, but we did have some, like we had a shoe store in Northbrook here, which was right over here by the railroad tracks, Eddie Grease.
He sold some clothes.
Yeah, Landwehr's, it was Landwehr. He sold some clothes, but I was a pretty big fella. When I was a freshman in high school, I was like already 6'4", and I weighed about 200 pounds. So clothing for my size was sort of difficult to find at times. And I took a 13 shoe, and Eddie Grease, who ran Landwehr's, he didn't have any. He'd order them special for me, So anyway, so that's, any more questions? Yeah, there's one.
How long did it take you to get from school back home?
Well, I lived on Angle Avenue, you know where Angle Avenue and Waukegan, you know where Waukegan and Shermer are up here? I lived on Angle Avenue, 1040 Angle Avenue. The house is still there, so that's where we lived. And how long would it take? Oh, maybe by car or by bike? By car it would take maybe 5-6 minutes. By bicycle it would be a little longer, which I often rode. And there was, if you go that way, you'll notice there's a little hill to go over the railroad tracks. And one of the things we did, I shouldn't say this, but after we got out of school in June, most of the time we rode our bicycles home. And we were always glad to get out of school for some reason or another. It wasn't that we didn't enjoy it, but we had our ink in our ink bottles. And if you go over Waukegan Road, there's a railroad train that runs underneath there. You ever see those tracks?
Yeah.
You familiar with it?
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yeah.
Well, they used to have trains that would go there with the big steam engines, and they'd go underneath that bridge, and they'd puff up, and us boys would sit up there with our ink bottles, and we'd try to drop them in that chimney on the engine. We never could, though. I shouldn't be telling these things, but that was sort of a graduation ceremony. And then we're talking about a time when there was, not to make any politically incorrect statements, there was certain people we called hobos, which were similar to maybe homeless people today, and a lot of them lived underneath the bridge on Waukegan Road. And they would go over to the brothers and the sisters who were generous there and would feed them. And some of these fellows were pretty talented with art, and they would do charcoal drawings underneath the bridge on Waukegan Road. We'd go under there and exhibit the art. But anyway, these are a few of the little secrets that boys, things that boys do. I don't know what to,
Okay.
I can't say anything for the girls.
I have a closing question before Mr. Hintz shows his graph there, but were you able to wear pants, or did you mainly have to wear skirts and dresses?
For the girls.
Yeah, the girls.
Oh,
School.
Well, you didn't, during the day.
We always wore dresses.
Okay, so you didn't get to wear jeans.
Wait, no.
Okay.
I mean, women didn't begin really to wear dresses until, I mean, I don't mean that, dresses, didn't begin to wear slacks
Yeah.
until, I would say, like in the early 1940s or something
Yeah.
like that.
And they were usually long skirts?
Well, no, not long skirts, no. And my mother made a lot of my clothes. My mother was a wonderful seamstress, and she made a lot of my clothes, and it was nice looking.
Mm-hmm.
She prided herself. I remember once I had a white pleated skirt, and the teachers couldn't get over that she would put a white pleated skirt on me and come to school, and it was ironed to perfection. And we did. And we didn't wear long skirts. And I was a regular tomboy. I mean, I played a lot of baseball, not only with the girls but with the boys. I taught in a rural school for a time, and I have kept in contact with a couple of those students. And I'd like to bring this one up, one that I had. His name was Henry Cook, and he stopped at my house. It hasn't been 2 years ago, and Henry lived out in what they called Aptekissick. It's still there. His father was a truck farmer, and when I say he was a truck farmer, he didn't have trucks, but he raised vegetables. And Henry's dad was farsighted enough to see that something was going to be changing out there, and he bought property out near Huntley, Illinois. And when Henry stopped to see me, which was over a year ago, he told me that he now owns 3,000 acres out there in the Huntley area. And he no longer does the farming, but he rents this land out to other farmers. So, I don't know if they have any other questions.
I think as far as clothing goes, I had 4 sisters, and three of them attended Mellencront over in Wilmette, the Catholic women's school, and I think that they might have had uniforms.
They had uniforms.
Yeah, I think they had uniforms there.
They didn't
It's
go
such
to,
a
they didn't go to the
yes.
Holy Ghost.
Irene did.
What high school did you go to?
I went to Northbrook High School, which is up here. It's the Crestwood home now. It's on Angle and
Oh, I know, okay.
Angle and Keys. You know where it's at? Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a grammar school for Northbrook, and then in the 30s it was also a high school. If you were Catholic, you wanted to go to a Catholic high school for boys, you had to go to St. George's, which is just inside the city limits, and you had to catch the train over on Dundee Road. There's a railroad track there, and there was the North Shore Railroad, and you'd catch that train and take it there to the school.
We listen to this very interesting map compared to this map.
I'll just throw in one clothing thing. When I went to school, the thing for boys to wear was knickers. You know, they came down to your knees, and you had long stockings up. This is I might call it a map. It's called a plat. A little story about that. In about 1958, the village decided to put in Meadow Road, you know, the street right out here in front of school. It runs from here to Dundee Road. It wasn't there, it was just part of the park at that time. And they had to tear down 2 stores on Shermer Avenue in order to run the street through there. And a neighbor of mine went there the day before the bulldozers knocked down these store buildings to see what he might find in the old hardware store. He went up in the attic and he found a broomstick about 6 feet long with some cloth-like material wrapped around it. He unrolled a little bit and it was some kind of a map, but he didn't have room in the attic to open it up, so he took it home with him, laid it on the dining room table, and it was a plat of Cook County, the whole Cook County in 1875. This is just a little part of it, and it has the name of the owner and the number of acres that each property owner had, all the way down to 10 acres. When it gets down to about 2 or 3 acres, it has the initial of the owner and the number of acres. So naturally gravitated to the north end of Cook County, which is where this area is, and he looked for names on there, and he found the name Hintz. So we lived 4 doors north of him on the same street. He rolled it up, brought it up to our house, laid it out on our dining room table. He said, by any chance, did you have ancestors in this area in 1875? Well, just by luck, my uncle was cleaning out his desk drawers about a year or 2 before that and sent me the obituary of my great-grandfather. And it said that Peter Hintz came to Northfield Township in 1855 from Holzbaum, Schleswig-Holstein in Germany. And on this map, my neighbor found Peter Hintz, 75 acres. Now this is Dundee Road, and this is Western Avenue, so he was right at the corner of Dundee and Western. He also found Peter Hintz over here at 35 acres. All right, that's between Dundee Road, Shermer Road, and Waukegan Road. My grandfather told me of living in a log cabin on that 35 acres. As luck would have it, right underneath there's CM 7 acres. Where I live now is about where the M is on that CM, and I could put a golf ball down in my backyard and hit a 6-iron into my great-grandfather's 35 acres from where I live today. Now, on the map here, just north of the intersection of Waukegan and Shermer, is a log cabin school. My grandfather told me he went to that log cabin school. That was the only education he got, was about 8 years at grammar school in that log cabin school. When they outgrew that school, they built a 2-room wood frame school, and Wilma remembers that school. They moved the log cabin school down about 300 feet south of Shermer Avenue, and they built a house around it. In 1962, they tore down the house to build a George Garner cyclery, you know where that is, up on Waukegan Road. When they took the siding off the outside of the house, there was logs. When they took the plaster off the inside of the kitchen, there was logs. That little log cabin school became the kitchen of that house, but it got lost over the years. So when they found it, and the Historical Society was formed to save that log cabin school, and they moved it down here to Meadow Hill Park. It was only there about 4 years, and some pranksters set fire to it and burned about 2/3 of it down. The village, do you have time? The village Public Works picked up the old logs, took them there. When this Historical Society across the street was formed, the village said, can you do anything with the logs? I cut 44 inches off of the best log I could find, polished the end, and you could count the rings on the log. So I made a brass arrow with a 1785 on it, and that points to when it was an acorn. Another arrow at 1800, that was the turn of the century, from the 1700s to the 1800s. and another arrow at 1843. That was when it was cut down to build the one-room log school. I went to a one-room log school on Sanders Road. They say it was the first school built north of Fort Dearborn in Chicago. Originally it was log cabin, then later it was built as frame. It was frame when I was there. We had a total of 8 students in the entire school. When we played against Grove School or Maple School, the teacher had a play, so we had 9.
Thank you, thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much. If you want further information, take a look at this book
Okay.
here. You and Loretta's family. Go
Right.
ahead, Billy.
Okay.
Hold on for that.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, all right, you can sit right there. Francis' grandmother and I have been very good friends. I've known Loretta, that's Francis' grandmother's name, Loretta Schill. I've known her all my life. And we lived next door to each other. And even though Loretta went to St. Norbert's, I visited that school many a time with Loretta. And I went to the school here in Northbrook. And Francis' grandmother is not too well just now, and I do stop over to see her. And Francis lives just in the next block to where I live. And I haven't been over there lately because I know that her mother is very, very busy, and Francis is very, very busy. But we do see each other quite often, don't we, Francis? Right.
And let's talk about Dr. Mrs. at home and the
Oh,
doctor's.
these children haven't heard that.
No.
All right, well, Francis, it would be her great-grandfather, was the only doctor here in Northbrook. It was Dr. Sinsel, and I don't know how many of you know where the Success National Bank is. All right, right next to that, where there's now an apartment building, this is where her grandmother lived. And Loretta, her grandmother Loretta, and I knew each other we knew each other all of our lives. And it was her father who was the only doctor here in Northbrook. And I said to the other class before, when you are ill, where do you go to see somebody?
The doctor.
Hmm? And a doctor's what? What do you call? Office. All right, you go to the doctor's office. Well, back when we would be sick, the doctor would come to your house. He made house calls. And her grandmother and I often went with Dr. Sinsel on house calls. I never told that to somebody else before, but he would permit us to go on house calls, but of course we had to stay in the car. We couldn't go into the house. And we would go down to St. Anne's Home. We never mentioned St. Anne's Home, which was, well, it isn't there, of course, anymore, but it was down on Waukegan Road and Techney Road. We would make house calls with Dr. Sinsel. So, now, some of you might be rather surprised that a doctor doesn't come to your house if you're sick. You go to him.
Do you
Have
have,
any questions?
If you had measles, chicken pox, or mumps or anything like that, you would be in quarantine, and they'd put a sign on your front door, and your friends...
And the back door.
And the back door, your friends could come and see you, in order to keep the contagious disease confined.
They would call that, you would be in quarantine for however long, and you did have a health officer. Dr. Sinsel was, I don't know who the health officer is in Northbrook now, and he was the one that would be responsible for putting the sign on the door, and he would be the one that would take it off. It would be up there for a certain length of time. So,
You have questions, Zach?
did you have movie theaters back when you were a kid? And if so,
No, movie theaters, no, we didn't have one. I went to the old St. Norbert's, which is up in Techney, and we didn't have a computer room either. There was no such thing as a computer. We didn't know about that.
Did you have
Yeah, but movie theater, they were asking about movies.
Well, not in Northbrook, no. The closest movie theater was the Teatro del Lago over in Wilmette.
Or the LCI here in Highland Park.
Highland Park.
Highland Park had a movie
I
theater.
think it's still there.
And then Glencoe had a
Yeah.
movie theater for a while too. But they tore the one down in Glencoe. So that was there. And I went to St. Norbert's up at the Techney, and if you're familiar with that area, the building is still there. It's now a gift shop and a museum. And we had 3 rooms. The first and second grade were at a lower level in the basement, and then there was 2 upper rooms where the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade were in the upper top rooms. I think there was about 7 or 8 people in my class, 7 or 8 children in the class. For sports, we played baseball and did skating and played pom-pom pull away.
Did you ever play red light?
No.
Oh, red light.
You did?
What's red light?
In fact, I can't even kind of remember what the game was, what it was anymore. I know we did a lot of running with it.
And I don't think we got a...
Red light, green light.
Green light, red light?
Yeah.
There were like green light.
Les mentioned 7 or 8 in his grade. I went to West Northfield School out on Sanders Road, and it was a one-room school. We had 8 children in the whole school. I think we had 2 in the 2nd grade, 1 in the 3rd grade, about 2 in the 5th grade, 1 in the 7th, and 2 in the 8th grade. When we had graduation, all 8 of us would go and perform. We sang old songs. The teacher played the piano. We just had a small lot around the school. There was a pump out about 50 feet from the front door. Every morning, one of the boys would be designated to go out and pump a bucket full of water, put it on the table in the back of the room, and there was a dipper there. And if you wanted to drink, you used the dipper and dipped it out of the bucket and drank. Everybody used the same dipper. There were outhouses out back, a boys and girls outhouse. There was no plumbing. There was a heater in the big stove in the corner of the classroom. And on Monday morning, the teacher had to start a fire from scratch. Some kindling wood, get it going good, and then put some coal on. But the rest of the week, if she'd put, we call it banking the fire in the evening before she went home, put a lot of coal on top, it would last overnight. So Tuesday morning, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday morning, they'd still have a fire going, but always Monday morning, they would start the fire again. I lived on a farm on Techney Road, 3 miles from the school, and most of the time I'd ride my bike to school. I learned to drive a tractor probably when I was about 8 years old, and when I was 11 years old, my mother took me to a subdivision with no houses but streets, and she taught me how to shift gears from low to second to high, how to steer and keep on the same side of the road, how to back up, how to turn corners, and that sort of thing. In those days, there was no driver's license required. By the time I was 12 years old, I would drive to town. At first, I'd drive with my mother riding along when she wanted to go grocery shopping or something like that. When I got into high school, I liked manual training. That was wood shop. And our manual training class would take a field trip every year, and we'd go to the Chalmers factory in Milwaukee. Now, the teacher had a car, and he'd load some of us in his car. I would take my folks' car and load the other half of the class in that. And 12 years old, I'm driving to Milwaukee with half of my class from school, going up to Milwaukee and back. I played at Northbrook High School. I played basketball and football, and when we went to an out-of-town basketball game, we had about I think 10 guys on the squad, plus the coach. The coach would drive the car, I'd drive the rifle car, and take half the team. And we'd go to Wakanda, Barrington. We were in the North Shore, Northwest Conference, and we go to all the games like that. So, yes.
Did many people wear helmets in football?
Oh, yes, we had uniforms. One little sidelight, living on the farm, a farm neighbor gave me a 1917 Ford truck. It was sitting out behind his barn, and it was all rusty, all that. I took it over to our place, and we were in the chicken business, and we had a heated room for raising broilers to eat, and there was space in there, and I pulled that truck in there one winter, and I tinkered with it. I put some new spark plugs in, got everything going, and finally got it to going. When we had our homecoming football game at Northbrook School in 1939, we had a parade from school down, you know where Marcy Lane is now, just off of Chapel Court. Marcy Lane would encircle where our football field was. So we had a parade from school, Angle Avenue, Shermer Avenue, Church Street, Chapel Court to Marcy. There was no Marcy Lane, but there was the football. I drove the 1917 Ford truck in that parade, but I got about halfway up Church Street and I quit. Well, I figured on that, so my mother was standing by with the family car and the chain in the back seat, and she came and put the chain on and pulled me the rest of the way.
We have a question back here.
Yes, question.
Did you wear uniforms in school?
Again?
Uniform.
Uniforms in school?
Oh,
No, I was in the public school, and in those days, most of the time I wore knickers. I remember I had a pair of red corduroy knickers and a red jacket, and that was, and you wore the same thing every day for quite a long time between washing.
and Mr. Hart?
Yeah, we just wore jeans or dungarees too, quite a bit, you know. They're sort of like jeans or what they call gabardine pants.
I'm a little older than Les, and we didn't have what we call jeans. We had bib overalls, you know, the overalls come up here and suspenders. That was the nearest thing to jeans that we had.
Jeans didn't become popular until about, I don't know, probably about late 40s or early 50s, you know. Any more questions?
Did you want to ask about the punishment? This group didn't hear about it yet, 5th graders.
The 5th graders, you want to hear about the punishment that was issued at St. Norbert's at Techney?
Yeah.
Well, we had all nuns for teachers. We didn't have any lay people. And we had what they call a cloak room. You'd wear, you know, in the wintertime, you'd wear your heavy wraps outside, you'd get them full of snow, and you'd hang them in there while your classes were in session, and the snow would melt, and it would give off sort of that damp, peculiar odor that wool and wet wool would give off. Well, if you needed correction and discipline, you were sent to the cloakroom to stand in there by yourself, or the sister had a ruler with a little metal strip on it, and you'd hold your hands out and she'd hit you with the ruler, you know. So if you didn't behave properly, or if you disturbed and were disruptive to the classes that they were trying to teach. And we had pretty much the same course. We didn't have no language courses, but we had, you know, math and English and geography and history. And some of there was no, per se, physical ed course, you know, no gym courses, or no art or music courses, so to speak, either. We did some singing. We had to attend Mass every day in the morning, and being an altar boy was a big issue. You had to learn the Latin to be able to go on and be an altar boy at Mass. Any other questions? Another question.
In school, did you make a lot of trouble?
Did I make a lot of trouble? Do I look like a troublemaker? No, I had my share of problems, yes. No, but that's all right. It happens, that it's all in the process of growing up, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Don's got something to tell about that.
This is a model of Shermerville's first village hall. How many know where the Lorenz garage is? Right across the street. Okay, this stood right where that Lorenz garage was. It belonged to the Lorenz family. And here it says wagon shop. Well, in 1901, there weren't very many automobiles. I don't know if there's any in Northbrook, or one or two at most. Everybody had a wagon and horses. So Lorenz started in 1847 building wagons. And they were still in the wagon shop business, but they built this building. And upstairs, there was an outdoor stairway here. I didn't build it on the model because it would be rather fragile. But you see the door here to get to the meeting hall upstairs. And that's where the village board met, where the village business and other organizations of town could meet in that hall. Now, here on the side you see like garage doors. And they opened up, and the Lorenz family let the volunteer fire department use that for their pumper. Didn't have fire engines because they didn't have engine-driven vehicles at that time. You had a horse-drawn pumper. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of it. A pumper had a long wooden bar on two sides. 4 men would be on this side, 4 on the other. On this 4 pulled down, the other 4 went up. And they'd do like that, and they could put a hose into the creek or into a cistern and pump water. Another fireman would have a hose to spray on the fire to put out the fire. So they kept the pumper in this garage. There was a bell on the roof and a rope down, and when anybody heard of a fire, they'd ring the bell, and the volunteer firemen, who were people that worked in the stores along Shermer Avenue, would come running over, pull out the pumper. If the fire was close by, they'd just pull it by hand. If it was some distance, they'd get a team of horses and hook the horses on and go to the fire wherever it is, throw the hose in a source of water. Now, I don't really know what cisterns are. Before city water, practically everybody had a cistern. And the eave troughs on your house drained down, and the water flowed into the cistern. In other words, it collected rainwater. You had a pump on there, and you could pump water out of there. My mother used water from the cistern for doing laundry. And so if there was a fire, the fire engine would come near the cistern, throw the hose in the cistern, and pump to put out the fire. I made this for the centennial about 3 or 4 years ago. They wanted a suggestion box, and so there's a slot in here, Centennial 2001 suggestions, and people could put suggestions. I made 2 of these. This one is from the Historical Society. The other one's over in the Village Hall. So how do you get the suggestions out? Well, you do like that, and you can get in here and get the suggestions. One little detail, there's a little spring-loaded metal ball there. My grandfather was kind of a woodworker, somewhat like I am, and he had tools, and he had cigar boxes full of nails and bolts and nuts. And when he passed away, I inherited all his tools and all those little things. And there was about 25 or 30 of these little ball catches. They're called a bullet catch. So this one is at least 100 years old because it came from my grandfather, and I thought it was appropriate to put a 100-year-old ball catch in something celebrating the 100th anniversary of Northbrook. Now, I think Billy has a little story about this bell.
Excuse me, we got to start wrapping up here, but
Okay.
How about, when did life in Northbrook start getting, when did Northbrook really start to expand and, grow at a rapid pace, and, when did it really kind of take off?
Right after World War II was the real expansion of Northbrook. all the GIs, that's the soldiers and sailors and Marines coming back from the war. I was in the Army, and when I came back, it was hard to find a place to live. We finally found a summer cottage of people that had a grocery store in Chicago, and they let us rent that for $20 a month. And so everybody was looking for a place to live. So developers came to Northbrook and started expanding. At that time, the village limit was Western Avenue on the north. Didn't quite go to Dundee Road. Went just a little bit beyond Waukegan Road and to Illinois Road on the south. And the developers started buying up farmland and laying out subdivisions. And then builders started building homes and selling it. So if I could remember properly, I think in a 10-year span, the population in Northbrook tripled in the number of residents in Northbrook. I remember when I rode my bicycle to Northbrook School, the village limits was out here on Walters Avenue, just west of Western, and the population was 1,200. Question?
In what year did the people name Northbrook?
Oh,
In what year did they what?
when they change
They
Shermerville?
changed Shermerville.
1923.
Why did they change the name?
Okay, why did they change the name? In 1871, Chicago had a great fire and burned down the city of Chicago. They decided to rebuild it with bricks. Now, the clay right through Northbrook, now Northbrook, was good for making bricks. Just down here on the Annisburger property was the first clay hole that they dug out clay and baked it to make bricks. Another was the Illinois brickyard where Underwriter's Laboratory is located now. Now, to get a load of bricks from these brickyards to Chicago to rebuild the city with a horse and wagon, it took about 3 days for a load, particularly if there was a rainstorm. There was no hard roads, there were just dirt roads. And if it rained, there were mud roads. And the horses would have a hard time pulling those heavy loads of bricks. It would take 3 days. They put the railroad track in 1872, and then they could load bricks onto a freight car, and in about an hour, they could have it down in Chicago. So that was a great improvement. Now, with the railroad, we had this park, and this park right across the street from here. That was here, it was called Barensheen's Grove. And there were 7 taverns in Northbrook in the early 1900s. And people from Chicago found it much easier to get on a train and come to Shermerville and get off and go visit the taverns to have a drink than it was to crank up the Model T, drive out on the dirt roads, have 2 or 3 flat tires, have to take the tires off, patch the tires, put them back on. It was a lot easier to just get on the train, ride out, get off here, go visit the taverns. Now, some of them stayed a little too long in the taverns until after the last train went back home. So what did they do? They curled up under a tree or on somebody's front step, and the people didn't like that. Northbrook, or Shermerville, was getting a bad name because all the people from Chicago were coming out here and getting a little bit too much to drink. So they wanted to change the name. An act of Congress came along called Prohibition, which prohibited the sale of alcoholic beverages. So that kind of put the taverns out of business. So that was a reason for people not to come to Northbrook. It's a good time to change the name. They asked for suggestions. The name Northbrook was suggested because this creek that you see over here is the north branch of the West Fork of the Chicago River. So the name Northbrook was adopted in 1923. I don't think they wanted to give up the room inside the wagon shop for a stairway, so they just sent her to make it outside. You know, they had the wagon shop in the front part, they had the fire pumper in the back, and the meeting room upstairs, and, you know, it takes about quite a bit out of a little room to have a stairway inside.
One more question, loud, talk loud.
Do you know who suggested the name Norfolk?
Yes, a man by the name of Ed Landwehr. He lived out at the corner of Kingston and Waters Avenue. He suggested it, and they had kind of a ballot to vote for two. There were 3 names, I think, and that one won out.
Sigmar?
That's not.
It was the village board that named the town.
Was it?
There was no election.
That's not a question.
School?
Last one.
In school, did the nuns move up to the next grade with you?
No, they stayed, the nuns taught a particular grade, you know. They didn't follow through. There was only 3 rooms to go through, you know. But the same nun taught practically all of the subjects though. She taught the math, she taught the geology, the geography and science. So she had her hands full. Yes.
The other 2 names.
The other 2 names, you know that?
One was Oak Glen, wasn't it?
One was Oakton and the other one,
No, I think Oak Glen, and there
Oak
was,
Glen.
there was already an Oak Glen.
Woodsdale was it?
I don't
another was
I don't
Woodsdale, one
remember.
was Oakland. It's in the videotape we watch, we can watch it again. Remember the videotape about Northbrook?
It's in the book.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's in the book too.
There
We're gonna
was-
do a
there was-
project.
There was one man on that village board, and it was Mr. Schilling who voted not to